At the time of the 9/11 attacks and the launch of the war on terror, Richard Armitage was one of the most powerful officials in the Bush administration as Deputy Secretary of State. He's told 7:30 the United States needs to be cautious in trusting Pakistan, and he also believes the US may have caught Osama bin Laden sooner if it hadn't been preoccupied with the war in Iraq. Mr Armitage joined me from Washington earlier. Mr Armitage, after 9/11, when the Bush administration started its mission to bring bin Laden to justice, did you imagine it would take 10 years?
No way.
What did you think?
Well, don't put struggles in time in terms of a time period, but I never in my wildest dreams thought it would take us 10 years to catch this character. I take a great deal of satisfaction out of the fact that Osama bin Laden couldn't run the clock on us. That is, he could stall until our attention was entirely diverted. But in my view, it should not have taken 10 years.
Why do you think it did take so long?
Well, we had a situation in this country where we had, in just, I think it was North Carolina in our South, we searched and searched and searched for a fellow who was responsible for an abortion doctor killing, and we couldn't find him. How much more so a search in such a wild and rugged place as Afghanistan / Pakistan?
If the US hadn't been preoccupied by the war in Iraq, is it possible that bin Laden would have been captured sooner?
I think so. Certainly, had we not been involved as we are in Iraq so soon, we could have concentrated more efforts on the whole situation in Afghanistan, including Osama bin Laden. And don't forget that even by, well, everyone's account, bin Laden got away from Tora Bora by the skin of his teeth. So we almost had him then.
Has Pakistan been as cooperative an ally in the war on terror as the United States would like?
No, clearly not, particularly in the wake of the discovery of the compound in Pakistan. There's no way you can call them close allies. They've been helpful when it serves their interest and less so when it doesn't.
What questions should American officials be asking their Pakistani counterparts about the circumstances surrounding bin Laden's hideout?
Well, who knew what when? Clearly, I heard someone say that if someone in the Pakistan government knew about this, it's horrible. If they didn't know about it, it's stupid and embarrassing. So the first question, I think, would be asked, who knew what? Who in the intelligence services knew what? And for what reason were they harboring Osama bin Laden?
The White House says it's inconceivable that bin Laden would not have had a support network in Pakistan. How extensive do you believe it would have needed to be to keep him safe all these years?
Well, I don't know how extensive, and I can't speculate, but it does strain credulity to think that he was alone in that compound for as long as 5 or 6 years without having some outward sign of support beyond simply a courier or two who showed up every once in a while.
When you were the Deputy Secretary of State in those months immediately after 9/11 and the United States was seeking Pakistan's assistance, how cooperative were officials there? I guess what I'm trying to establish is whether the alliance is disintegrated over time or whether it's always been difficult.
As Deputy Secretary of State, I looked almost daily at the intelligence regarding Pakistan after 9/11, and for the first 4 years until around February of 2005, I could find nothing beyond some occasional liaison between ISI and the Taliban. However, around that time, I believe Pakistani authorities came to the conclusion that perhaps the United States and their coalition partners were short of breath and hence went back to a more traditional relationship, much more supportive of the Taliban and, by extension, al-Qaeda.
Did you say short of breath?
Yes, that term they use is the United States is short of breath. That is that we won't see things through, that we would cut and run from Afghanistan. As it turns out, 10 years is hardly short of breath or cutting and running. But this was a phrase they used around 2005.
Given what's happened with bin Laden, should the US government believe Pakistani officials when they say they have no idea where the Taliban's Mullah Muhammad Omar and dozens of other extremist leaders are hiding?
Look, Pakistan is going to do what Pakistan feels is in their interest. In my own view, it's not a matter of believing or not. You can follow the old Reagan dictum of trust but verify. And I think from here on out, there'll clearly be a lot more on the verification end and a lot less on the trust end.
America's given Pakistan billions of dollars in return for its cooperation in fighting terrorism. How likely is it that members of Congress are going to start asking if that's a sound investment?
I think it's absolutely assured that members of Congress are going to look very carefully at this money. And although we've pledged a lot of this money to Pakistan, they complain with some degree of accuracy that not as much as has been pledged has been delivered. This is true whether you're talking in military hardware terms or whether you're talking in economic support funds.
What will happen, though, if the US winds back the amount of money it's giving Pakistan?
Well, I think if we completely back out of the situation, we run the risk of having as many as 187 million Pakistanis who have a very young median age becoming victims of extremism. And that is a very serious problem, not just for South Asia, but the ramifications up and down the Gulf would be severe.
In what way?
Well, the labor forces in many of the countries, whether you're talking United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, are made up of Pakistanis. And if extremism was the dominant form of expression in Pakistan, you can bet your boots it would spread up and down the Gulf through their citizens. This is a fear expressed by those in the Gulf. At least it's been a fear they've expressed to me.
Do you think that the current administration is handling relations with Pakistan the right way? Should there be more carrot, more stick, something different?
I think that the Obama administration should get pretty good marks thus far. They've always been a little skeptical. They'll be more skeptical of Pakistan from here on out. It's going to be left, I think, for Pakistan to prove herself. And I think that the way the administration thus far has held themselves gives us the best possibility that Pakistan can get better on the straight and narrow path. Whether she will or not, I don't know.
In terms of the mission in Afghanistan, do you believe that the death of bin Laden will put pressure on President Obama to speed up the withdrawal of American troops?
Well, first of all, President Obama put pressure on himself when he announced that July 2011 he was going to begin a withdrawal. But clearly his left will say bin Laden is dead, there are only 50 to 100 al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan, let's reduce in a major way. So I think we'll have a rather robust discussion of this, but there's no question pressure is being put on the administration.
What's your view on whether the US should be exploring the possibility of cutting a political deal with the Taliban?
I think most conflicts do end with negotiated settlements. Some don't, but most do. The question has to do with the Karzai government and what reconciliation talks would mean. Does it mean that the Taliban should reconcile themselves to the Constitution and the central government? That's one thing. That's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. If, on the other hand, by reconciliation is meant the Taliban must the government must reconcile to the Taliban, that's a bad thing, and that would squander, in my view, the limited gains of women's groups, NGOs, minority politicians, etc., have made.
Richard Armitage, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sales.